Her name was Amina, born in a sun-drenched village where red earth clung to the feet of children as they ran through narrow paths lined with clay huts. She was the daughter of farmers, raised on resilience and tradition. Her mornings had been filled with the sound of roosters crowing, the scent of smoke rising from clay stoves, and the laughter of women gathering water from the river. Life in her village was simple, but not easy. Every grain harvested was a triumph, every meal a result of sweat and struggle. Yet, within this world of hardship, Amina grew with a spirit that was unshakable. Her father often told her, "Dignity is wealth no one can steal." But dignity would be the very thing she fought hardest to protect in the years ahead. When she met Daniel, it was not in the village, but in the bustling city where she worked as a translator for an NGO. Daniel was different from anyone she had ever known. He was sharp, polished, and charming in a way that felt intoxicating. His words dripped with promises of security, of opportunity, of a future where she wouldn't have to measure her dreams against the weight of poverty. Love, or what she thought was love, blossomed quickly. He courted her with attention she had never known. Flowers, dinners, whispered assurances that she was unlike anyone else. She believed him. She wanted to. For the first time, she felt as though her sacrifices could lead to something greater. The marriage was swift, celebrated in two worlds: her village, where her people danced barefoot in the dust, and his city, where champagne glasses clinked under crystal chandeliers. Amina thought she was stepping into a new life, one where partnership meant equality and love meant protection. But reality was slower, harsher, and more silent than she ever imagined. At first, Daniel's distance came cloaked in the excuses of work. Long hours at the office, late nights with clients, endless phone calls. She told herself it was temporary, that he was building something for their future. But as weeks turned into months, the mask began to slip. His words grew colder, sharper. The flowers stopped. The dinners disappeared. Soon, the promises became commands, and the love she thought she had found became a chain around her neck. In public, Daniel was the picture of respectability. Well-dressed, polite, successful. People admired him. Behind closed doors, Amina carried the invisible bruises of indifference, humiliation, and abandonment. He mocked her accent, dismissed her opinions, controlled her movements. She became a ghost in her. Own home, seen only when useful, invisible when not. And still, she stayed. For years, she convinced herself it was for the children, for stability, for the vows she had made before God. But deep down, it was because she believed leaving meant losing everything. What she didn't know was that Daniel had already ensured that loss. Early in the marriage, he had slipped a document before her, something she didn't fully understand, filled with legal jargon she had never studied. He called it protection, a formality to keep things clean should anything ever go wrong. Trusting him, she signed. That document would later become the weapon he wielded against her, the prenuptial agreement. In Daniel's mind, the prenup was his shield. No matter how the marriage ended, his wealth was safe, his empire untouched, and she, this woman who had given her youth, her body, her years, would walk away with nothing. And now, in this courtroom, he believed the moment had finally arrived. The final humiliation, the end of her story, but stories never end the way arrogance expects. The courtroom was small but imposing, its walls lined with shelves of legal books whose spines had been cracked by decades of battles like this. The air smelled faintly of paper and polished wood. Amina sat quietly, her heart heavy, her face calm. Her silence was not defeat, it was habit. Years of swallowing her voice had taught her that sometimes silence was the only shield one had. Daniel arrived in a tailored suit, his steps purposeful, his smirk never leaving his face. He shook hands with his lawyer as though this were nothing more than a business meeting. He didn't look at Amina, not even once. To him, she had ceased to exist, long ago. The proceedings began. Daniel's lawyer spoke eloquently, presenting the prenup as though it were gospel. His words were smooth, rehearsed, dripping with confidence. "The agreement was signed in good faith," he declared. "It is binding, and thus my client retains full control of his assets." Every sentence felt like a blade. Amina's stomach twisted, but her face remained still. She remembered the night she signed those papers. She remembered Daniel's smile, the way he brushed her questions aside with dismissive affection. She remembered how small she had felt in that moment, her trust manipulated into submission. Daniel leaned back, his arms crossed, watching with satisfaction. His laugh, soft, under his breath, cut into her like salt on a wound. But then, something shifted. The judge, a man with years etched into the lines of his face, paused. His finger traced a section of the prenup, his eyes narrowing. He adjusted his glasses, leaning closer. He turned a page, then another, his expression tightening. Daniel's lawyer hesitated mid-sentence, faltering for the first time. "Your Honor?" he asked cautiously. The judge didn't answer at first. He continued reading, flipping pages back and forth. The silence in the room thickened. Even the faint hum of the ceiling fan seemed louder. Finally, the judge spoke. His voice was calm, but his words carried weight. "This document," he said slowly, "is deeply flawed." A ripple of shock moved through the courtroom. Daniel's smirk faltered. His lawyer blinked, his rehearsed confidence unraveling. The judge explained. The prenup had not been properly filed. The signatures were incomplete. The notary stamp was missing. Even the dates, mismatched and sloppy, invalidated its authenticity. In the eyes of the law, this so-called ironclad agreement was nothing more than paper. Daniel's face drained of color. His arrogance cracked. For the first time, he looked at Amina, not with superiority, but with disbelief. She met his eyes, her gaze steady. This was not revenge in her eyes, it was justice. The courtroom stirred with whispers, the balance of power shifting before everyone's eyes. Daniel shot to his feet, his voice rising in desperation. "This can't be right," he shouted. His lawyer scrambled, flipping through papers, stammering arguments that held no weight, but the judge was unmoved. His words were firm, resolute. "The agreement is invalid. Legally, it does not exist." Years of arrogance collapsed in that single sentence. The empire Daniel believed untouchable was suddenly open for division. The wealth he thought secured was now vulnerable. The home Amina had built with her hands, the businesses she had supported in silence, the years of unpaid labor she had poured into his life, all of it was no longer his alone. Daniel's laughter was gone. His smirk dissolved into panic. His hands trembled as he slammed them against the table, but there was nothing he could do. And Amina? For the first time in years, she inhaled deeply, her chest rising with a breath that felt like freedom. This was not about money, not about revenge. It was about dignity, the dignity she thought lost forever. In that moment, she realized her sacrifices had not been erased. The law, for once, had heard her silence. The gavel struck. The sound echoed like thunder through the courtroom, final and unshakable. Amina rose slowly, her steps measured, her back straight. She was not leaving as the discarded wife Daniel imagined. She was leaving as a survivor. For Daniel, the fall was devastating. His pride, once untouchable, lay shattered. The wealth he had hoarded was no longer beyond reach. His arrogance had been his undoing, but the story was larger than them. Amina's case was not unique. It was a reflection of countless untold stories. Stories of women who leave their homes, their families, their countries, only to find themselves silenced in foreign lands. Stories of love that turns into control, of promises that turn into prisons. Her victory was not just hers. It was a voice for all those still waiting for justice. As she stepped out of the courtroom, the sun hit her face. She closed her eyes, feeling warmth, freedom, and possibility. She thought of her father's words, "Dignity is wealth no one can steal," and realized they had always been true. Daniel sat inside, broken, his laughter now a hollow echo. And so the story asks us all, how many lives are quietly broken by arrogance disguised as love? How many women sit in silence waiting for justice to notice their worth? Amina's story is not just about divorce. It is about resilience, about truth, about the moment arrogance meets consequence. And it leaves us with one final question. When the truth is finally revealed, who will still be laughing?